I'm not going to lie. I love Superman. I wear Superman pajamas. I have a Superman pillow. There's a picture of him up on my wall. And I've watched just about everything Clark Kent. Hell, the career path that I've chosen in my university course is because of Superman. He might not be my favourite superhero of all time, but he's the most influential hero in my life. So I was pretty excited when they revealed that the next character that was getting an Arrowverse show was Superman, but it was going to be with a twist. This show had big shoes to fill. In my opinion, we didn't have a good Superman since Tom Welling's stint. I'd seen Tyler Hoechlin as Superman in crossovers and alongside Supergirl, but I'd never had time to warm up to him. I'd always stood by the fact that Welling is the best iteration of the character because of the time I had with him, but everything changed a few weeks ago. For the first time in 11 years, Tyler Hoechlin in an hour did what Tom Welling had to do in 10 seasons. Tyler became my favourite Superman. I'm extremely hard on DC projects and DC television, as those are the heroes I grew up with. Marvel wasn't as much as a presence in the early 2000s. However, the company has seemed to have learned from its past mistakes. I'm looking at you, Titans, because Superman and Lois is the perfect TV show that understands its characters. It understands its characters and who they are, and it takes you on a journey, a Superman that you might not be familiar with. If you strip the superpowers away, it's just a man trying to do right by his kids. I'm going to break down the smaller points, like I always do, but initially, this is the series that is the perfect reboot to the Arrowverse. Alright, let's break stuff down. Tyler Hoechlin as Superman. It would be a hard job to pull off the Man of Steel. You need to learn from the past, but at the same time, craft something new for a new kind of audience. Hoechlin manages to do that within the first 10 minutes of being in the red cape, from his first outing in the Max Fleischer suit to his defusing of the nuclear power plant. Tyler is shown to have all the qualities of Superman before him, but something else added as well. He has the kindness of Christopher Reeves, the intimidation of Henry Cavill, the brains of Welling on the humble side of Routh. He works with all those qualities and still brings a certain sense of fun, which we haven't seen in a depiction of Clark Kent before in any media. You get the sense that he's in over his head when it comes to family life. As a member of the audience, you have an understanding of, yeah, okay, that's Superman, the guy who can lift up an island and not break a sweat. However, and raising a family the best he can. The charm of Superman is that he's always a representation of what a man can be at the time. This shows that it perfectly encapsulates what a father tries to be and what a father is. Speaking of the Man of Steel being way over his head, CW made the decision to give him 2 kids, making Superman a dad. It had never been done before in live action terms, but I think it's genius. I've always found it a little bit lazy whenever a superhero gets a child and writers just make it giving him a sidekick role. However, the show really delves into what it's like saving the world and then being there for just normal kids. The show plays the concept of Clark that had never been there 100% of the time for the world and his family, and the divide that he has to make. It brings a sort of realism to the show because he doesn't have the freedom of ripping his shirt open, fighting bad guys and calling it a day. He needs to be there at home and at his family's side. How it handles the origin. Let's face it, everyone knows at least the basics of Superman's origin, and the show really relies on that because it skims right past it. It is a breath of fresh air when companies realise how much a superhero's origin has done to death. When it comes to Superman, there was a whole 10-season show addressing the origin. We don't need another 30 minutes retelling one of the most well-known stories in comic book history. I'm glad that the show only did a montage, because it would have been a waste of time and money on DC's behalf trying to reinvent the wheel. Besides, the show isn't Clark's origins, it's someone else's. We'll get to that later. Alright, enough about me talking about Clark Kent. Let's talk about Lois Lane. When watching her in the two crossovers, I wasn't really sold on Elizabeth Tulloch as Metropolis's most famous reporter. I think the crossovers weren't the proper way to reintroduce such a perfect character, because she didn't really have much to do when it came to the world-ending events. However, now that Elizabeth has a chance to showcase Lois in more than an hour, I can confirm that the version is probably my second favourite, only just coming close to Erica Durance's portrayal. Lois Lane is a force of nature when it comes to journalism. Tulloch portrays this, but also showcases that is the heart of her family. She's more calm and patient than the other versions of the character, but she kind of has to be. As a mother of two young boys, you can't just fly off the lid and expect everything and everyone to fall into place. You need to be able to set an example and understand them more. There's a scene in the second episode where Clark says, "Your dad thinks it isn't a really good time to move to Smallville," and Lois says, "Well, that's how you know it's a good idea." I couldn't help but chuckle at that scene, because that is Lois Lane. It shows that she's grown up from what we're typically used to, but the rambunctious journalist cub is still at the core of her character. There's a little bit of journalism intrigue that shines in the first episode, and it looks like she'll be at the Daily Planet more and more as the series develops. But all in all, Tulloch brings a new layer to Lois, as she brings the best out in her family and the people around her. Right, now that I've talked about the characters that you know and love, it's time to talk about the Super Sons. I love that Jonathan Kent and Jordan Kent were involved in this show. Both of them come with personalities that look as though they'd be really cool to break down as the series goes on. Even the first look, I love that the two twins just aren't like Clark. Jordan, played by Alex Garfin, is a dead ringer for the young Clark Kent, and you can 100% get why they cast him. However, Jonathan, played by Jordan Alsace, is another story. Whenever Superman has had a son, he always has raven black hair and blue eyes, some resemblance to his dad. However, the casting went with Alsace, who has blonde hair with little resemblance to the Man of Steel. But when you realise it, Kal-El could probably genetically have a blonde offspring, because his mother's also blonde, and his famous cousin, Supergirl, is also blonde as well. Garfin and Alsace play characters that don't really have an understanding of each other and the way they are, but at the same time love each other unconditionally. They're each other's priority in every situation, as shown when Jonathan agrees to move to Smallville and Jordan asks Jonathan for his playbook. They also never end the day on bad terms. With personal experience about having a brother, I 100% relate to what they're trying to display. I really respect CW for having the depiction that I can relate to, instead of having two completely warring heads. Jonathan Kent. At face value, when first meeting Jordan Alsace's Jonathan Kent, you think that he's the same mild-mannered demeanour as his dad. However, personally, and being the person that's watched every Smallville episode ever, I think Jonathan is more like his adopted grandfather of the same name. The character is mostly quiet, acting as the mouthpiece for his twin whenever Jordan gets in trouble. But he has an overwhelming sense of charm that John Snyder conveyed perfectly when playing Clark's dad in Smallville. One of the things that is touched on in episode 2 is his issue of quietness. He'll sort of suffer in silence until he reaches the breaking point, which is something interesting to see. The CW normally gets an actor in their mid-20s that has no problem with speaking their emotions, but I really think the network has studied teenagers and how they would actually behave. Riverdale. Personally, this makes Jordan the most realistic character in the Arrowverse. He's a gentle soul, but at the same time, I feel like he's a person that you just wouldn't want to disappoint. There's also a hidden aggression in the character when seen in the second episode, and also when he defends Jordan in the pilot. I really feel as though the guy would only throw a punch as a last resort, sort of like when Jonathan Kent Sr. lashes out in Smallville. I don't know. I just feel like there's something more in common than his grandfather than his father. Also, I'd be dumb to not reference the fact that Jordan Elsas can spell out Jor-El. It's a nice touch, but I don't think that was intentional. Right, now let's get on to Jordan Kent. Quick spoiler warning if you haven't watched the show. Jordan was my favourite character in the pilot. The way he reacts to his dad being Superman and the hidden resentment he has for his twin is something that I'd like to see evolve. I think Jordan's more mature than most of the characters on CW, the way that he'll kick and scream with brash anger, but he'll never end the day on a bad note. Always making sure he's on good terms with all of his family members. The revelation with him being the one that gets Clark's powers is a great touch because of the fact that every Arrowverse hero seems either to start off mild-mannered or to adopt a personality. It's refreshing to see these shows give someone abilities of someone who's broken and with so much baggage, because you can tell really fun stories. In the second episode, you get the feeling that Jordan wants to be accepted in the world he lives in, breaking the tough demeanour when his dad lets him in, and tearing up when his brother confronts him. Honestly though, Alex Garfin acts his socks off, and I'm really excited to see where the character goes. The villains. Superman and Lois seems to be the more mature compared to the Arrowverse shows, with getting rid of a few cliches of the network's normality. One of these cliches is the Freak of the Week. What do I mean by the Freak of the Week? Well, when Smallville first started in 2001, Tom Welling's Superman had to fight an enemy every episode, which would lead up to the main threat of the season. This aspect carried over to Arrow, and they sort of got rid of it in Batwoman, but it's still relevant. The problem with Superman is you've seen him punch enemies senseless and level a city until there's nothing left. Henry Cavill. So the show does away with that and gives Superman the problems of being a family man instead of a fighter. That doesn't mean that there isn't a main villain of the series, however. In the first episode, we are met by a mysterious stranger who wants to kill Clark. I won't spoil the identity of the stranger and why he's there, but I think that this villain will be different from the mustache-twirling ones in the Arrowverse that have come before. He wants to kill Clark for a valid reason, so we'll see how that pans out. In conclusion, I think this show is going to be something special. I hadn't been excited about superhero shows since 2014. I sort of grew up with the Arrowverse, and now that I'm 20 years old, I feel as though that I'm going through the motions with the shows a little bit. I was turning a little bit cynical because I wasn't as thrilled as I was 7 years ago. I think as a kid, you're sort of expected to not have the weight of the world on your shoulders. When you get to about 18 years old, everything changes, and so do you. However, this show brought me back to it all. The pressures of just starting out to be an adult. I turned to Superman and Lois just like I did when I was 14 years old again, watching Barry Allen run faster than the speed of light. Hey guys, I probably should have said this at the start of the video, but welcome to my YouTube channel. I did do a blog, but I feel like you can't convey the passion of what I want to talk about with just the written word. I feel like hearing my voice is like a whole lot better, and you get to know me more. So, if you want to stick around, you can always click subscribe and share this video with your friends and stuff. But I'll be probably back next week, and I hope to see you soon.